It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Teenagers who have stronger social networks are far less likely to experience anxiety and depression. The quality of friendships, the quality of relationships is absolutely essential. It's just critical.
It really matters, doesn't it?
It really does.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Now, the most requested episode that we ever get
By one person
on the Happy Families podcast. This is the one that everyone looks forward to every month.
I thought it was book club.
It's the doctor's desk. Today, we're going to dive into some parenting science and have a look at what we can do to help your family be happier. I'm Dr. Justin Coulson. I'm here with Kylie, my wife, and mum to our 6 kids. And we have got 3 studies that primarily focus on little kids today. We're talking about preschoolers. We're going to have a conversation as well about helping babies to sleep more. And there's a conversation to be had, some new science around how mothers calm their distressed infants with soothing signals and how postpartum depression disrupts the process. So, Kylie, which one would you like to start with today? Where should we go?
You ask me this every week.
Yeah.
I just start at the top.
Well, I've lost the top. Where's the top?
Preschool play with friends.
Okay, this is a really fun one. So essentially, at the University of Cambridge, some researchers got a whole lot of data from almost 1,700 children at ages 3 and 7. So we've got a nice longitudinal study. Really great design, heaps and heaps of kids in there. And what we've got here is the first clear evidence that the ability to play with peers has a protective effect on mental health. We're talking specifically about the play process, not just having friends, but the ability to play. Connection is at the heart of our well-being, but this research shows that it starts even in those preschool years and extends into childhood. So basically, those with better peer playability at the age of 3 consistently showed fewer signs of poor mental health 4 years later. And the research says significantly, this protective link between peer play and mental health held true even for subgroups of children who were particularly at risk of mental health problems. So in essence, what the findings seem to suggest is that when we give young kids who might be vulnerable to mental health issues access to well-supported opportunities to play with their peers, like at playgroups or down at the park or with the neighbours or the preschool, whatever it could be, it can be a really empirically valid way to help them to have longer-term better mental health.
It's interesting. We're talking about a longitudinal study of 3 and 7-year-olds. It breaks my heart to think that we're having conversations about mental health challenges in our 7-year-olds.
Yeah, it really brings it home how serious this stuff is. Now, I mentioned that it was the University of Cambridge study, but it's actually based on Australian data. The Growing Up in Australia study looks at these kids born between March 2003 and February 2004. So like I said, just under 1,700 Australian kids, and looking at the different types of peer play, simple games, imaginative pretend play, goal-directed activities like building a tower from blocks, collaborative games like hide and seek, all that sort of stuff. And basically, the more they were playful, the better they did, the less likely it was that they would experience mental health problems like hyperactivity, conduct disorder, emotional problems, peer problems at age 7. They just did better. Even the ones that were highly reactive when they were young, they did better when they were 7 because they were able to have that high-quality play with their peers.
The research just keeps coming back so strong that play is such an important part of our children's progression and development. And yet we still haven't got the message, have we?
What I think is really curious here as well, though, is the standard instruction to parents who have got young kids that are struggling is, well, we've got to get parents into a parenting course. And there's certainly value in helping parents to upskill themselves and become better parents. But what's curious to me is if we can help the kids to get access to having their needs met through peer play and through physical activity and through things that we know boost well-being, that we might actually move the needle further and faster. We might do more to help because there are so many risk factors that jeopardize children's mental health, and so many of those are beyond parental control. But when the kids have got strong social networks and strong play opportunities, it makes an enormous difference for their well-being.
For a split second there, I had a mental memory of one of our children, and as a 3-year-old I used to take her and her best friend to the shops, and without fail I would have these old ladies who would follow me around the supermarket as I did the groceries, and they would inevitably end up stopping me and said, "We've been following you now for the last 5 minutes and those 2 3-year-olds have not stopped talking. They're worse than 2 old ladies niddering." And even today, we don't have little ones around us anymore. But whenever I see young children engaged in play, I just have to stop. I love it. I love seeing the way their faces are animated and they light up, and the little conversations they have.
This research, while it's looking at these kids from age 3 through 7, it's applicable at every age. Teenagers who have stronger social networks are far less likely to experience anxiety and depression. Adults who have strong social networks are far less likely to experience anxiety and depression, and any other range of mental health challenges. The quality of friendships, the quality of relationships is absolutely essential. It's just critical.
It really matters, doesn't it?
It really does.
So number 2, we're talking about how mothers calm their children with soothing signals, and how postpartum depression actually interrupts or severs those signals.
Yeah, so most parents know it even if they can't prove it. When a baby becomes distressed, mum seems to have this magical, unique power to soothe and calm that little baby with gentle touch.
Often mums don't even need to say anything.
Yeah,
just their presence in the room.
That's it.
And your child instantly calms down. Just that visual of mum is often enough.
But that doesn't seem to happen so much with new mums who are experiencing postpartum depression. It seems to affect, statistically, about 20% of mums who give birth will then experience PPD. And their ability to engage with and soothe their baby is significantly diminished. So a handful of researchers got together and at York University in the UK, they did a really interesting study with parents who are dealing with distressed infants, trying to help them to help their babies to soothe. And essentially what they did was they monitored mum and then monitored bub during a distress scenario. So minor distress, nothing that's going to cause any long-term damage to the baby. But essentially, mums and babies went through 3 different phases of interaction. In the play phase, mums played with their infants like they normally would. They sang and they talked and they touched. Then there was what they called the still face phase, where mums were told, you don't touch the baby, you don't speak to the baby, you maintain eye contact, but you have an expressionless poker face. So the infant becomes distressed and agitated because they're making a bid for connection and mum's not really responding. There's eye contact, but there's no other indication of response. And then the final reunion phase this is the focus of the study. Mums are now permitted to re-engage with the distressed infant, just like they did in phase 1, soothing and touching and singing and talking and that kind of thing. And the mums and the babies were monitored. Their heart rates were monitored, looking at how their emotional state is. And essentially, when mums were able to be nice and calm, the baby calmed down really quickly and soothed really quickly. Whereas when mum stayed distressed, when her heart rate remained elevated, when she was still kind of agitated about her baby's distress, it took a lot longer for the baby to calm down. Just highlights how important it is for parents to, and it's so hard, especially if they're experiencing depression or if they're experiencing a lack of support, but the importance of them being in an environment where they can be calm, where they can feel like they've got some self-efficacy, they can feel like they're in control, because when parents have got that, when mums have got that sense of, I've got this, their heart rate stays low, the baby seems to feed off that, there's this reciprocal loop going, and they do better. So I thought that was a fascinating study and one worth sharing.
Having actually gone through this process with one of our children in quite a significant way, as you were talking, the thought occurred to me that regardless of what people are seeing on the outside, when you're struggling in that deep, dark place, there is such an internal turmoil going on.
Yeah.
And you can't calm anyone when you're not calm.
Yeah, because emotions are contagious. And then you become aware that you're not calm and you start to get even more anxious that you're not calm, which only exacerbates the problem.
Well, and then the guilt sets in because you should be able to calm your baby, but you can't even, you just can't.
So important to have the support that's necessary and so important to be able to just breathe, relax and pull it together. Hard research to hear about, but important if we want to be able to help mums, particularly during that postpartum period.
So after the break, let's talk about the last study in relation to baby sleep.
And I can't help myself. I'm going to chuck a fourth one in because I just love talking about this stuff. We're going to throw, because this has all been about little kids, we're going to throw one in for the parents of big kids as well. This one is about mother and father connectedness and involvement during early adolescence. The 21st century is a tricky time to be a teen girl. Alcohol, drugs, mental health concerns, body image issues, technology, sex. Our daughters face all these and more. The Happy Families Misconnection Summit brings together the best modern-day experts on teen girls to show you how to stay connected with your daughter and help her face these challenges head-on. Available online via video at the Happy Families webshop.
It's the Happy Families podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. And you've done it now. There's 2 more studies.
And we've got to go fast because I just love talking about the science.
All right, so the next study is on baby sleep.
Yep,
what have they found?
Comes out of Penn State. Researchers have basically trained new mums in skills that help newborns to sleep more during the night. And the research shows that second kids in those families also slept longer. Every parent wants to know, how in the world do we do this? And what the basic findings have been is that if parents can do a handful of things, the kids do a whole lot better. So we will link to the details of this in the show notes, but here's what the researchers found. So basically, the study trained mothers to, at bedtime, be responsive to their kids. Responsiveness. That's the key word here. Being involved, being responsive, being aware. They asked them to establish healthy routines, to respond to their children according to their development and their needs. Did I get my pronunciation of development a little bit strange there? I meant to say development and needs. And teaching children to soothe themselves as much as possible. Now, this isn't sleep training. This isn't leaving the child to, quote unquote, soothe themselves while they scream themselves to sleep. Instead, it's this really beautiful, responsive way of helping children. So basically, what the research showed was that once a regular bedtime's established, consistent bedtime routines are going to promote longer sleep. The routine should be soothing, include things like a bath and reading, avoiding overly stimulating activities like rowdy play.
Oh, like kicked out of the bed.
Yeah, and help kids to prepare for sleep.
Where was that 15 years ago?
To help children soothe themselves to sleep, the researchers said parents are encouraged to put their children to bed while they're drowsy but still awake. Self-soothing is a valuable skill, and the sooner children learn it, the better they and their parents will sleep. So that's self-soothing, meaning I've been popped into the bed and now I'm going to go to sleep. And everything's calm and soothing and safe. It's not saying the child's screaming their head off and they've got to learn how to soothe themselves. That's not what they're saying. And what they've also highlighted is that because night waking is inevitable, especially with little kids, newborns, infants, they're hungry, they're wet, whatever it might be, parents, rather than expecting that the child has to be fed every single time, might just use a lighter touch soothing method like holding or rocking and feeding, but only when there's proper distress. Sometimes they're just disturbed and they need a little pat, they need a little song, and they go back off. So it's really just a gentle response to kids who are waking up. It's all kind of common sense, and yet there are so many books out there from so many so-called experts who teach exactly the opposite, and there are so many myths out there about what kids need at that time of night. So I just thought it was a really nice study that reinforced all the stuff that we know that seems to work best.
One of the things that I recognised pretty early on was when I would get up in the middle of the night, I just left all the lights off, kept everything low and quiet, and that definitely helped in most cases to resettle the kids before I was able to go back to sleep.
Yeah. So the last study that I want to talk about, just for only 1 minute, because our time is up, is the importance of connectedness and involvement during early adolescence. We've talked about little kids all the way through this podcast, but this is one for the parents of the bigger kids. So this particular study looked at how mothers and fathers' connectedness and involvement, both at an individual level and a collective level, influence the lives of their kids. So the researchers asked mums and dads about their connectedness and the degree to which they're involved in their kids, and had a look at the children's problem behaviours. So we're talking about externalising, acting out, and we're talking about internalising, that's anxiety and depression sort of things. And also the positive outcomes, like how pro-social the kids were and how hopeful they were. We spoke about hope just recently on the podcast, looking at early adolescence. So we've got the average age of the child being around about 11, 12 years of age. And what the research showed, even after controlling for the child's age and gender and their ability to self-regulate, is that mums and dads actually make different contributions, primarily as a function of the child's outcome. So dad, but not mum, connectedness and involvement were negatively related to adolescents internalizing and externalizing behavior. In other words, the more that dad is connected and involved, the less likely it is that early adolescents are going to experience anxiety, depression, or that they're going to act out in rebellious kinds of ways. For mum, what the research showed was that the more connected and involved she was, the more the kids were pro-social and the more hope they exhibited. So really, really curious to me that mums and dads have different roles in terms of the psychological well-being of their kids. But when they work in a complementary way, the kids thrive. They're less likely to have problem behavior. They're less likely to have psychological difficulty. They're more likely to behave in positive pro-social ways, and they're more likely to be hopeful about the future. So that's everything that we've got for today's podcast. You can see why this is people's favorite, right? All this great research, all this great stuff to talk about when it comes to parenting.
So great.
All right, tomorrow, it's I'll Do Better Tomorrow. We'll talk about how we're doing as a family, what we can do better, or what we've really been winning with this week. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rowland from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. For more info, you can find all of these studies in our show notes. And if you'd like to know more about making your family happier, please visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.